Welcome to The Kid is in School, where we talk about whatever we want, since our kid is not here to interrupt us. But we don't have a lot of time before the bell rings, so let's get right into it. Did you have any sibling rivalry growing up?
Oh, I don't think sibling rivalry happened for me because I'm so far removed from my siblings age-wise that it's like a rivalry. I think you'd have to be in competition for your parents' love and affection to have some sort of rivalry. And
that would be very weird if your older brother, who's over a decade older than you, was jealous of you.
Yeah.
I feel like they make true crime stories based on that.
Yeah, I imagine that there probably could be in some families. If you're older and quite a bit older, but not still within a reasonable amount of age range, like you're still adolescent when your sibling is born. My brothers and sisters were, I think maybe one's even had graduated high school by the time I was born. Mm-hmm. So, she's off to college by the time I'm born. So I don't think that...
Who's your dad, Mick Jagger? What's going on here?
Tony Randall.
Ah, yes, of course.
That's a reference for only people that are 95 and older.
But that's how they did it back then.
Yeah.
See, you and I are both the baby of the family, but I have a sibling. My sister is about a year older than me, give or take. So But I don't think we were in competition either. Is that what rivalry is about? It's about in competition for the parents' love?
I thought
it was just about, you're the closest person to me, so I want to see if I can do this faster than you. I can eat my cereal faster, that kind of thing.
I don't know. That's the thing. I don't have siblings around my age. So let's back up and you just tell me what it's like to have a sibling that is like a year and a half older than you, not
right
2 decades older or a decade and a half older than
right,
you.
Because if your siblings feel more like uncles and aunts, then you've had uncle and aunt rivalry.
Yeah.
Which is that's a Hatfields and McCoy thing. So having a sister that was really close to me grow up, she's a little older than me. She actually taught me how to tie my shoes. She taught me how to ride a bike. She even was one of the earliest people to teach me how to read. I remember she would sit there with me and help me form words on a book, on a page. So like sound out the words. So
that's how bad she was at it. She taught you how to form words on a book.
She wasn't a very good teacher. No. She was a great teacher. It just didn't stick with me. I can't speak today. So anyway.
This year. Planets. You're just throwing out words now.
I lost my train of thought. I was trying to sing her praises. So anyway, it was less like growing up with a sister and more... And I won't even say bestie because she wasn't like a confidant, She was just a very helpful person to me. She was like a personal assistant.
She was the concierge.
She was like a very good
I've got a great restaurant for you, Abby.
She would. She's always there with advice. She's always got tips and tricks. She's like, here's what you need to do. That's like my catchphrase for her in my mind. Here's what you need to do. Because she's always got a good idea. And I was very dependent as a kid, but I think you were more independent because you didn't have your siblings around telling you what to do, micromanaging you.
Well, I think that something that happens is that I grew up somewhat like an only child. Mm-hmm. Because my siblings being so much older than me, like when you're a child, if you have a sibling that is like 3 or 4 years older than you, they feel really old.
Right.
Because kids...
They're hitting all their milestones ahead of you.
Right. And when you're a kid, anybody that's just a little bit older than you seems like an adult. If you're 8 and they're 12, it's like they're an adult. The 12-year-old's an adult. But when it is something like an aunts and uncles thing. So
that's what I was going to say was when they are actually adults, they do all seem like grown-ups. They are just one big group of grown-ups.
Yeah, and I don't know that I ever fully in my mind separated young adult and older adult in my family. They all kind of felt like the same. So my siblings, like I'll just pick my sister that's 18 years older than me. Mm-hmm. Her and my dad's sister, my aunt, even though they would be separated by 30 years, they kind of felt like the same generation to me, even though they clearly are not. They're separated by multiple generations.
Did I get this right? Your aunt and your sister?
Yeah. What are you confused by?
Oh, well, I just think I lost my train of thought while you were talking. So you're saying even though they are 30 years apart, you as a child viewed them as the same age.
Yes, basically.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, same generation. I didn't necessarily think they were exactly the same age, but I didn't think of them. They seemed closer to each other than they did to me.
One had white hair. One was like, had no wrinkles and brown hair. Stop taking yourself so seriously and start laughing at my jokes.
Well,
because you're getting very technical, I can tell. You're frowning at me.
I'm just thinking through. I'm like, are you getting this correct? Or I'm also thinking about you because I have to think back. It's like, did my aunt have gray hair at that time?
She sure did.
How do you know? You didn't know me then.
I don't know. I just feel like it's funnier that way. Because you said they're separated by 30 years. We're talking about the 80s here, so I don't know. I guess Clairol had hair dye back then.
Yes, they've had hair dye for quite a few years. I think you can find an old Sears and Roebuck catalog from the 1850s that have hair dye in them.
I'm still stuck on when you were talking about what a 12-year-old seemed grown to you. I remember watching Stand By Me. Yeah. And Kiefer Sutherland's character is he can't be more than in his 20s in that year. He's the big teenager, the scary bully, and I thought he was a grown-up, like he's a dad. He might as well be a dad when I'm watching this. But now if I watch this movie, I'm like, everybody's a baby. They look so young. Why does he have stubble? He's such a young face.
Yeah. And just think about having that dynamic in your own family. Mm-hmm. And so to kind of walk it back a little bit, when you were growing up with your sister, you're playing with her. Even if you're not best friends, because she's probably got her own set of friends and you've got your own set of friends. Mm-hmm. You're doing things in the house together, and maybe you're going on trips together. I was much more isolated. Mm-hmm. So when you say independent, yeah, I guess I'm independent, but it's kind of like only children seem to have this, where we just use our imagination, or we create our own friends, our own play situations. So our toys, our stuffed animals, those become the other beings in the house, the other humans.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I definitely use my imagination and personify my stuffed animals, but only to a point. You'll tell me stories about hours you would spend by yourself, and I couldn't do that. And we had a little girl on our block when I grew up. She was my neighbor's little sister. And when I guess, was in high school, I never saw her big brother again. He was off, but in the summertime, she would always be playing in the backyard. She was probably 6 years old. And she would, every time you walk by, she'd go, "You want to play with me?" But I was a teenager, so I would spend a little time with her, but not a lot. Usually I just would say, "Oh, I can't. I'm on my way to the candy store. I'll bring you something back." And so, yeah, I just thought, only children. So sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not sad. That makes it sound like a Oliver Twist type of living situation. We're playing and using our imagination. So like Indiana Jones was big when I was a kid. So like I took a jump rope and it had a broken end on one side. So I just broke the handle off completely and just had one handle, and I used it as a whip.
Cool.
And I would go around and I whip our basketball goal or whip our fence.
Yeah.
And the whole thing in my mind is happening. I'm Indiana Jones. I'm getting chased by a boulder. All of this is happening by myself in my yard. Mm-hmm. And if somebody rode by on their bike, they'd be like, "What is that little fat boy doing with that jump rope? It doesn't look like Indiana Jones. I didn't have the hat or the costume. It was just me and a whip." And so I'm creating these situations. But I had friends in the neighborhood too.
Yourself when you're a kid, they wouldn't say that. They'd say, "Why is he angry at the basketball hoop?" My version of that is I would sit there and reenact commercials, because I was such a TV head as a kid. If I ate something like cereal, breakfast cereal, I would always want to just do the commercial for it before I actually ate it. It would enhance the eating of the food.
I feel like you're doing that for your sister, though. Like, you're like, "I'm creating this commercial so you can watch it."
Yeah, you would think so, but she wasn't in the room. I'd do it perfectly alone, and I would get to do as many takes as I wanted. So I would just be like, wow. Every single bite would be like, "Wow, this is delicious." And it made
I think
it more
she
fun.
likes it. Like,
Exactly.
You're also the voiceover.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So I don't know what's weirder, seeing a kid hit a basketball hoop with a jump rope, or a little girl talking to herself while she eats her food. But I think it's all pretty weird.
Eats a food.
Eats her food, I said.
It sounded like eats a food.
Yeah, well, I didn't say that.
Well, let's play it back. And so, yeah, I mean, every kid uses their imagination. It's just that there was no other option. There wasn't like, "Hey, you and your brother go down to the school playground, or your older brother, you're watching Luke today." that didn't happen. That's not even part of my equation.
And I think it's glorified anyway, because really, I remember going to my friend's house, and she had a little brother, and she would make him be a puppy, and he had to crawl around on his feet, on his hands and knees all day, and she was like, he loves it, but I was just like, man,
They
have
just
some
torture.
self-respect, little kid.
Now, that is one thing that I avoided was I didn't get any of the older sibling bullying thing. Like that was never a thing. I maybe did a little bit of that myself towards some of my nieces and nephews. Well, particularly my niece. I have a niece that's only 4 years younger than me, 4.5. And so I know she tells a story about how I convinced her that I was like an alien inside. I took over Luke's body and I was actually an alien, but she better not tell anybody.
And it terrified her.
And
I think that's imaginative. Well, that's the thing about this the friend I'm describing. It wasn't Succession level trauma. It was more like she imposed her will on him. It's like, okay, if you're going to hang out with us, you have to do the game I want to do. And he was more than happy to do whatever game she made up. And so that's the thing about me hanging out with my sister. I just remember her door being shut tight and me knocking on the door, reaching my fingers under it like a little cat paw, because she'd have a friend in there and they'd be playing, some game like Mall Madness or Girl Talk. And I'd be like, let me in.
do you picture those little fingers under
I
the
would.
door?
Anything I could do to get her attention, and she'd just say, go away. They'd ignore us. They'd laugh louder. And anytime she had a play date, I knew it was trouble for me.
Yeah, that didn't really happen. I did have at different points, different siblings had lived with us, like, because my family had kind of moved all around, and they were older when we moved away from a certain area, from Missouri to Indiana. Mm-hmm. Some of them were left in different parts of the country. And so when they moved to Indiana, they lived with us probably for just a few weeks. It felt like...
Oh, really? It was that short?
It might have been a couple months, but it was not as long as it felt like as a kid. As a kid, it felt like almost a quarter of my childhood was with my siblings living with us.
Of course.
But they kind of moved in to be like, okay, we need to find a house somewhere.
Yeah, they had their spouse with them.
Right.
They were young adults at that time. Yeah, it's like Full House growing up in your house. I like it.
It was different.
It sounds like a sitcom. Well, did your parents have a favorite then?
Well,
sounds like they loved everybody equally if they're letting everybody live in the house.
Something I realized really recently, maybe like last week even, was that it's not like I had consciously thought about this, but I think that I kind of just assumed my parents loved me the most out of everybody.
You got the sweeter version of them.
I got the sweeter version, but I also did not see them interact with my siblings as children. So I only saw them interacting with my siblings as adults, which is not an everyday thing. So like as I'm growing up,
right, they didn't care about their stories.
Yeah,
they cared about yours.
Well, they just weren't around. Yeah. So every night I was having dinner with my parents. My siblings weren't around. They took me to school or picked me up or took me to church, or all of this stuff was happening with just me and my parents. And my siblings were off living their own lives. And so I think I just grew up with the thing of like, oh, my parents pay this much attention to me, but they don't do that to my siblings.
Right.
Because they've already done all of that with them. And so now...
You didn't witness it.
Right. And so now thinking back, it's like, I realize they they do love my siblings the same as they love me. It's just, I don't know that I really wrap my mind around that because we were so separated. It's kind of like if you said, does your mom love your sister as much as she loves your aunt? And it's like, you probably would just say, no, she probably loves me and my sister more than my aunt, even though that might not be true.
Right.
The love is not quantifiable like that.
You can, a little. Well, I think based on your observations, that makes a ton of sense. But I'm sitting here thinking, your siblings grew up in the 70s. That was their heyday, and then yours
they were kids in the 70s.
Kids in the 70s, like kids that ride a bike.
Yeah.
And you were a kid that rode a bike in the 90s. So your generation was much more snarky. Your toys were weird. You had Gak as a toy. They had Slinkies. Your toys were messy and loud and weird. Your commercials, your cartoons were hard to understand. You liked wrestling, and it wasn't the same back then in the 70s.
It is different because, like, my brother had G.I. Joes that were the big almost like Barbie size
Yeah.
GI Joes, and I had the little ones that were made out of plastic.
Well, you save your parents money then.
Yeah, and and they had the weird joints, held together by a rubber band, and it had a cartoon that went with it.
Yes.
But then when my nephew got into GI Joes, he's 9 years younger than me. They had gone back to like the Barbie size.
They
again.
got good again.
So
why did they cheat us in the 90s?
I know. I got the plastic version.
I think it was because they were just making so many cartoons to crank out more and more toys. They were like, make the toy cheaper.
Yeah.
Make it cheaper because we got 80 more to bring out.
Yeah, they did that all through the 80s, really. So like when I was real little is when I had those. And so by the time I think we hit 92, 93, somewhere in that range, I think you weren't even allowed to have cartoons about toys anymore, which essentially it was just a 30-minute commercial for whatever toy you wanted to sell, whether it was
the jig is up.
G.I. Joe's,
agencies.
Transformers, He-Man, all of those. They literally created them as commercials to sell toys. to kids.
Right. Which we didn't know as kids. Everything was real to us. But I think our kids' generation, actually, I don't know if our daughter, because she's already having toys, but like when she has kids, they will have AI dolls. You know what I mean? Like they'll be realistic.
Megan.
It'll be just like Megan.
Yeah, and it won't be a 6-year-old in the backyard going, "Will you play with me?" It'll be her AI doll.
Making her play with her or else.
Why won't you play with me?
Why are people afraid of technology? By the way, she does have a talking doll that you can feed, and it's just like, "Mama, more food, Mama." It's really cute, and our dog loves the smell of this doll's hair. Watson is the one. He, for some reason, makes a beeline for her, grabs her by the head, and just like shakes her till she's bald. I've caught him doing it twice now, and I'm like, what is it about this doll? And it's not because she can talk, but I'm disappointed because she is one of the more advanced like dolls. She's like a cool doll.
He knows. He's like, we gotta get rid of this AI thing. That
thing's plotting against you.
Yes, this is against God's will that this thing exists, and I'm gonna make sure I protect my family.
It is evil. Get it out of here. It's so funny because he's the most passive dog, but that thing just drives him nuts. He's like, you.
I know. I don't think he doesn't even really play with toys normally. He wants to play with that one. Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, since my siblings are that much older, but thinking about the GI Joe thing, what are like some similarities that you and your sister had? Because like GI Joes would be something where it's like my brother liked them. He liked Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars, and every boy likes those type of things. So we have that connection. There's some things where we're not alike, where he liked Speed Racer, and that didn't, that was a real old looking cartoon by the time I came around. I liked Transformers or something like that, and he's like, I couldn't care less about that.
We did have a lot of similar toys growing up and similar interests, but let me dive back into the cars here because you're taking me back. Those, every now and then I would go to a friend's house who had the cars, and no one ever bought me those cars, but I liked playing with them if the doors opened. You know what I mean? Matchbox cars in particular. And I loved if the steering wheel had intricate detail and you could see the gear shift. And I was always disappointed when that detail was lacking, in these little, I just love when they're metal and you can open the door. Weren't those cool?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's more like a Matchbox car. I think Hot Wheels were always, Matchbox, they would have, this is a Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
And it's got the doors open up. Hot Wheels would be like, this is a fire flamer 3000. You go, that's not a real car, and it's not
they
based
get
on
the
anything.
licensing rights.
Right. So it's always a little more abstract and futuristic looking with the
I didn't
Hot
know
Wheels.
there was a difference. I'm glad you could point that out to me, because now that I'm thinking about our daughter's big car collection, it's true. She's got a handful of them. About 10 of them.
So yeah, was there stuff like, well, I guess even in like personality, things where you and your sister are alike, appearance, those type of things?
Well, of course. Oh, first of all, my mom dressed us alike, and we're only a year apart, so a lot of people thought we were twins when we were the same height or similar height. And we would always have the same hairstyle, two little twists with duty bops. That's what I call the bubble-shaped elastic that you wrap around the end of a braid. She always had duty bops or matching barrettes. And I think as her sister, I felt very different from her. I looked up to her, and I felt like she's, but we were both academically inclined. We both loved to read. I thought we were both good at art. She always thought I was more artistic, but she made cool stuff too. I liked what she made. She would illustrate books and things when she was young. So, yeah. And the toys, man, we started with stuffed animals. Then when we graduated to Barbies. There was never a time where she had a toy where I didn't understand it. Like, she wasn't into Simon, let's just say.
What kid was into Simon?
I don't know.
You have to be a real like
Why
nerd
did the
to be
adults
like
think
that.
we wanted Simon? Simon got real hard real fast, in case you didn't remember.
Simon's a game that it seemed like every family had, and you would play once every 18 months.
Exactly, because you get immediately frustrated. You go, why does this thing exist? And then for our generation, they tried to dumb it down with the bop it, but even that one was annoying because it wouldn't be responsive. You know, bop it, twist it, ah! And then you wouldn't do it in time, and you go, ah,
Tap it, yeah. It's the same exact thing where it's like, oh, it's a game that I will play. Like we'll all play once, and then every kid has it, but it's like we're not going to play with this. It's not an everyday game.
Yeah, I like the look of it. If Simon didn't make you repeat up to it's like memorizing the numbers of pi. Essentially, that's what Simon's aim is. But if it didn't make you do that, it wasn't about mimic. It was just about lighting up randomly, and you could pretend you were on the Starship Enterprise. That's what I would like about the Simon. Like, give me more light up things that I could just press them randomly.
Yes, Captain Picard. Boop, 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 boop.
In fact, what was stopping me from doing that anyway? I never had to turn it on.
Yeah, things that me and my siblings are like, it's hard to say personality wise because I hear stories about them. Particularly my brother, people say, oh, he was like an old soul. Like he always seemed like an adult. And the younger sister out of those
Never
three,
a compliment, by the way.
which one, the old soul?
To be an old soul. It
Yeah.
means you have too much responsibility put on your shoulders.
Yeah, you seem like you're stressed. and
Yeah, you're smoking cigarettes at 12.
Getting a cup of coffee, looking at the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, you're rolling up your button-down shirt at the elbows. Anyway, your other
Yes.
sisters, yes.
And my other sister they always said, oh, she was so funny, and they thought she should be an actress or a comedian. And I don't think that anybody thought that about me. And so I didn't really experience either of them that way. So it's hard for me to say how we're like personality-wise. I know in terms of looks, for a long time, my younger sister, it's weird to call her my younger sister because she's not younger than me. She's just the youngest
Of the three. The first three.
Yes.
There was the first batch, and then there was the surprise baby,
Right,
which
yes,
was you.
That's me. And so, special gift from God. And so she and I, people used to say we looked alike, especially when I hit like my late teens or early 20s. Some of her friends were like, you look just like her. And we did. I think that probably we did have a very similar look. And
I never thought that. I've seen all the pictures. I don't see it, but who cares?
yeah, well, we look like siblings. We didn't look like twins. Like, we didn't look like, and we didn't look the same gender. We just looked like, actually family related. My oldest sister, I don't know. She doesn't. We just don't have enough similarities that I think people would go, oh, you guys look like siblings. We've got the same color eyes, but and we've got maybe a little bit, but we just don't look the same.
I just flashed back to the theory I had when I first started dating you. I thought you looked so much like your older sister, the one you think you don't look a lot at all like you resembled her children, that I thought you were her secret child and your parents raised you. This is before I knew anything about your family. I was always putting the pieces together.
Yeah, well, there's too many witnesses to know that my mom was actually pregnant. So
Right. It was well documented. That your mom had you late in life.
Yes, and so video footage did exist, and
they kept reminding you of it. Like, no, we're not going there. We're too old.
Yes,
leave us alone, son.
And so she, personality-wise, they're all, well, the older two are much quieter people than maybe the younger two of the four of us.
Yeah, the younger two are introverts. Let me tell you this, because you didn't answer this question about who your family's favorite is. You claimed like you couldn't possibly know because you didn't watch them grow up. I'll tell you the answer. When they had 3 kids, the baby of the family was the favorite. That's the youngest daughter. Then when you came along, you were instantly more adorable because she was a twerpy teen and she was, rebelling, and you were the special gift, like you said. So you were the miracle baby. So yeah, you ousted her as the best, the favorite, by the way.
I don't know.
She's never forgotten it.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true because I think because she wasn't, you say like twerpy teen, that makes her sound like she was.
All teens are twerpy.
Even, What does torpy even mean?
They talk back. They roll their eyes. They've got their own opinions.
Maybe. I
They
don't know.
don't comply.
I don't know.
You know teens. Okay, but she was a good kid is what you're saying.
I don't know. I wasn't alive. Or I was a baby when all of this would be going on. So I just don't know it to be true, because by the time I'm 4 years old, there's no other person living in my house but my parents and me. So I don't know. I don't know that there would be that she ceased being the favorite or the baby of that generation of kids.
Right. And the fact that you weren't asking questions about these people and you were much more interested in creating your own imaginary people around you tells me you definitely grew up like an only child.
Oh, well, this thing, I do not remember my two oldest siblings not married. Like, I don't remember the pre-married version of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much older they are than me. I remember the younger one's wedding, because I was actually, I guess, the ring bearer at all of their weddings, but I don't remember the first two. I was too little.
Yeah.
But I do remember that. But I barely even remember her living in our household when she was in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I barely remember. I remember like 1 year of that.
Wow. You're like Webster.
How so?
Because you're just this little kid surrounded by adults doing his own little kid thing.
Going inside of a grandfather clock.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we are in personality wise, but in looks wise, there was that sister that people said we looked a lot like. Now, as I've gotten a little bit older, people, especially people in my family, have gone, "You look so much like your brother." And there was a picture that I found like a few weeks ago, and I actually mailed it to my brother. It was my brother and my dad, and this picture could be 20 years old. I'm not sure exactly how it is, but I wasn't sure it was him in the picture. I was like, "Is this me or is this him?"
That's cool.
Yeah.
I always wanted to find an old painting of a distant relative and it looked just like me.
You could just create one like that.
I could. Yeah, what's stopping me? But like be on tour in Europe in a castle or something. Or, well, do they have old paintings in different countries in Africa? I'm wondering. Could it have been? Yeah, either way. I'm black and white. I don't know if the listeners know this. So,
Just a randomly.
But I want to see a mixed person
looking in Africa.
Yeah, no, she could be. I want to see a woman, and I want to see her look my complexion and have my hairstyle, but in old timey clothing.
I tell you, if you found
I don't care what her station was.
A painting in Africa that looked like me, it's not going to be a good guy.
Nope, he's holding an elephant. He's doing illegal things.
Yeah. He's a poacher.
That's the nicest thing you could be.
That's the best possible thing. Someone who looked like me could be in Africa. Lost in the jungle is the best thing you could be. Dr. Livingston,
I presume.
So yeah.
We bounced around a lot, but I didn't answer an earlier question that you asked, which is, are we close in personality? So, or you said, what's it like having a sibling your own age? And it's like we share a lot of the same milestones and events.
Experiences,
right? We went to the same restaurants at the same time. It's so weird. You're like a time travel person, with regard to your siblings. You just knew your parents at a different time of life. Mm-hmm. You're Marty McFly. He had siblings that didn't get to go back in time and see his parents when they were younger. So actually, your brother's more like Marty McFly. So yeah, I felt like I always had a buddy in the house, and I was never alone. And I still would, make up my own games if she wasn't interested, or I would accommodate her weird games. Like she would always say, "Let's play school," and I never knew what that was going to entail. Usually, she would write on a paper, give me instructions, tell me to fill out forms, and then she would correct it with a red pen.
Let's play accountant.
Yeah, I never understood school. She's, "Let's play school." I'm like, "Okay, what do I do?"
That's somebody that turns into like a corporate job type of person. It works in an office. It's not somebody that ends up as a comedian.
I liked Let's Play Grocery Store, where we take my mom's actual canned goods and put them in her bedroom on the windowsill and then pretend to shop for them. I don't know why that was more fun to me, but I just like that. I like the setting up of the store.
You just wanted to be independent, live on your own. You're like, let's see what it would be like to actually buy your own groceries and not have to eat what your parents buy.
Either that or setting myself up for a life of loving retail, where I just wanted to set up the peas and carrots and arrange the cans facing forward. Look at what a good job I did.
Yeah. Well, how are you
I
not
still do that
alike?
at TJ Maxx. How are we different? My sister, well, let's see. When one of our first jobs, and she helped me get it, was working at a pizzeria, and she was employee of the month every month, and I got fired. So our dedication to our work ethic was different, and taking ourselves seriously on the job was different. I think I don't know. I just behaved so immaturely, and it wasn't to cause trouble.
From a pizza place.
I got fired from a pizza place. First of all, you should never take a no from someone who's not in a position to give it. So I don't respect the person that fired me. So I'd say
sounds like they were in the position to give you the no.
They were.
They fired you.
They were in a position above me, and they told me not to come in, and they would not give me a paycheck anymore. But to me, it's less of an insult because it's like, you know what? You ain't that cool anyway. Well, one time I tried to balance too many pans and just to get the work done faster, so they fell down. They fell out of my hands and caused a big noise, and I got yelled at. I got reprimanded for making noise because the customers out front could hear it from the kitchen. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just taking the pans. Take them one at a time." "Yeah, but it takes too long." That kind of thing. Another thing was he put me on the cash register, and there was no seat back there, so I had to stand and greet the customers. And when there were no customers, I would squat down under the counter because it was comfortable to squat. And he'd be like, "What are you doing? You're popping up like a jack in the box. You're hiding." And I was like, "No, I'm just comfortable." And I said, "Can I get a chair?" And he goes, "No, you don't sit on the job." I don't sit. Nobody else sits.
Yeah.
Hated that guy.
So it definitely sounds like you should have been fired.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what it would be like to see an employee, I assume a teenager employee, just squatting on the floor.
Just squatting.
Like, what are you doing? Like,
and when you knew me in my 20s, I would squat a lot at the subway. But then tight jeans came into fashion, and it started like cutting off my circulation below the knee. So I got out of my squatting habit just because I couldn't stand after I was done.
that completely killed your. It's not even laziness. It's like a version of just being exhausted, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I've ever shared this anecdote. In fact, I know I haven't because we haven't talked about amusement parks this way. But there was one story where I was too tired to walk around Kings Island, and I asked my mom if she would push me around in a wheelchair. And she was like, "Seriously, a wheelchair? I'll get it if you really want it." And I was like, "Yes, please." And my sister's like, "You are not serious." And I was like, "Please." And they did. And but to me, the funniest part about it is we got our caricatures drawn, and the man did not draw my wheelchair. He drew me sitting down in a like a beach lounger, like a beach chair.
Ableist.
I don't know. Either that, or he's like, "Look, I don't know." Yeah, he should have incorporated the wheelchair.
Yeah.
But anyway,
he didn't put the blanket that covered your legs.
Yeah, maybe he could see that I didn't really need it. So anyway, so yeah, when it comes to carry me was like my catchphrase. Carry me. I didn't like to be inconvenienced.
Yeah, but that's weird that you were saying it when you're 15.
Yeah.
Carry me.
Carry me. Donato's Pizzeria. Give me a chair. Give me an easy boy so I can recline while I take these orders.
I'm trying to think if I was even fired from a job because it's a way that I guess I'm different than certainly my brother. My brother has multiple degrees. He's a hard worker. He works too hard, too long, too hard, all the time. And he was always encouraging me to work harder at school and other things. He's like, you're more gifted than me in this academic stuff. So you should be, if you just worked hard, combine that, you could do some great things.
He wanted to see you at NASA.
I know. And so, I'm trying to think if I ever got fired from a job like that. It wasn't until like I moved to New York and they just kind of eliminated my position that I got fired. So it wasn't like a real fired.
Yeah, it wasn't personal with you.
Right. So
mine were always personal.
Well, all the places I worked, I think were like, we don't want you to continue doing what you're doing here, but they wanted me to change, and I think they saw potential in me. So they're like, if you just cut your hair or if you just do this or that, they would stick with me.
Yep.
I know when I left Funkoland, which is the precursor to GameStop, that was my first job. Mm-hmm. The manager was kind of like, because I said, I think I'm going to give my 2 weeks notice in because I got a job, loading dock that paid a little bit more. Mm-hmm. He's like, okay, you don't even have to give 2 weeks. It's cool. This can be your last day. Like, I think he was just kind of like, I'm done with you.
Yeah. What do you do around here anyway?
Well,
stand around, take up space.
He really wanted me to go into whatever the management side of GameStop was.
Wow.
He was like, you should be a manager. You should not go to college, because I was in high school at the time. You shouldn't go to college. You should just be a manager here. So like as soon as you graduate, you can be an assistant manager here, and then you can move up to manager, maybe you could get district manager.
Actually kind of sounds like he liked you. He wanted you around longer.
I guess, but he certainly wanted me to live the GameStop dream, I guess, forever. But
right.
It was something where I was like,
And
no, I'm
betrayed him.
Well, I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. That is one thing, I can't tell you whether my siblings are like this or not, but it seems like they at least have some sort of independent streak with that.
Yeah.
Is that you can't really get me to do anything I'm not willing to do. It's kind of like hypnosis. They always say you can't hypnotize somebody and make them do something that they would go against their will.
Okay.
Something that's out of their nature to do. If you get them to cluck like a chicken, they would be willing to cluck like a chicken. So I have that where it's like, you can't really make me do something I am not willing to do. Sometimes I'm willing to do some things and I'm like, I hate it, but I've been willing to do it.
Yeah. And you are, for the record, a hard worker in the comedy field, I would say. Like, you're driven, but you're not, I don't know. Maybe you're a workaholic. Do you think you're a workaholic? No, you know how to have fun.
Yeah, I think I'm just passionate about comedy, so I'm constantly doing it and constantly working on it, which is a little different. So yeah, and my brother, he was always, and the thing is, like, my brother I looked up to him a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, I think he was like the fun uncle that some people have, but he was my brother. Funkle. So yeah, and we didn't live in the same state even. So I only saw him a few times a year. So when I saw him, because he already had a good job, he would buy me toys. We would go to different amusement parks when I was around, even though like most of the day he was working. At night, he took me to like weird stuff like flea markets and like, here, get these sunglasses and these water guns and all the different weird stuff they had, that stuff. And so he was always the fun one. And so even when I was in second grade, you know how sometimes at the beginning of the year they'll do roll call and they say, if anybody wants to be called something different here, let us know now so that we know we can correct that. So we can make sure we call you what you want to be called. And I told him my name was Rick, which is my brother's name.
And call me something completely different than my own name, please.
Yes, call me Rick. And so maybe 1 week into it, you're getting the homework and it says name, and I was writing my name Luke. And they're like, is your name Rick or Luke? And I was like, oh, well, call me Luke, I guess, because I couldn't.
You couldn't commit to the bit.
I couldn't commit to the bit. Right? So I couldn't remember that I had said that. I mean, I knew that I told him that, just because for whatever reason. And when I was 7 years old or whatever it was, I decided I wanted to be called Rick, like my brother. So
that's so cute.
Yeah, and I could picture our daughter doing something like that. Call me this, which would probably be a dog name.
Oh yeah, she does that a lot. She's like, I'm a dog today.
Yes, call me Sparky.
Yeah, if you're like, give me your hands. They're paws.
Yeah.
She will correct you. You mean paws.
Yeah.
Is it weird that we have just one kid? Since I grew up with a sibling, and I also have two half siblings that we didn't talk about, but two brothers, and they are older. So, and I didn't grow up with them. So yeah, my relationship with them is a little bit different. It doesn't feel like a sibling that give me noogies, as a kid. They're just very, very kind, pleasant people to know. But my sister, what did I start saying? Oh yeah, it made me want to always have two kids, and we don't. We have one.
Because you had her and you and both in the household together.
Yeah, two kids in the house. According to my mom, 2 birthday cakes because one of us would complain that we didn't get enough attention. I don't know why my mom gave into that, but she's a very nice lady. So double the birthday cakes.
How about presents though? Double the presents?
I don't know. I'm sure I was allowed to open one of hers. I know that I could play with them once she opened them. There was that rule because you can see in the pictures of birthday parties I'm holding her presents. But
did it work the other way around that she was allowed to play with your presents?
She probably didn't want anything to do with my presents. But I feel I had such a bias, and I have one very good friend who grew up an only child. So she was like my prototype. She played piano. She had her there was nothing but pictures of her in the house. We didn't have any pictures of ourselves in the house. It was just too much for a single mom to have to keep up, like frame photos. Give me a break. We had some early ones, baby photos, but that was it. But this girl, there's like pictures of her at every age, So I just thought, wow, only children are strange. They're just like, extra smart and extra talked to. Like they get double the attention.
Well, look, at this rate, our daughter's already 5. She might not be an only child, but it's going to be a situation like mine where her sibling is 15 years younger than her.
I did see a woman, crossing the street today, and she had a toddler with her and an 11-year-old. And I was like, that's quite a spread. I don't know if I could do that. But then if we do have a second kid randomly out of nowhere, I'm going to make sure that the firstborn is like the junior parent and does all the work. Yeah. You know what I mean? I have no problem handing that off.
That's the thing. You have to have them close enough together that the older child is helpful and can be an extra parent, an extra set of hands, and not so far apart that they are married with their own kids by the time that you are having the second baby.
I know, then you miss that window.
It's closed.
They're going to be too busy. But I will say this about our only child, because I was going to say it doesn't meet the stereotypes I had as a kid, but now it's like she actually does, because we went to a neighbor's birthday party. It was all adults, but she was the life of the party. She had a great time. She made friends with a local bartender through our neighbor and was like, I got to meet you at your workplace. So after school today, we went to that bar and, she got to see her buddy, the bartender, and she was like, oh, it's great. So, of course, the bartender indulges her and is like, I'll give you some seltzer water. What do you want as a garnish? She got a cucumber. She got a lemon. She got a lime. She got olives and cherries. And so she's just sitting at a bar like an adult having a cocktail. And I'm like, this is not normal for a child.
Well, she's an old soul.
Thanks for joining us today. If you had a great time, let us know on social. Follow Kid is in School on Twitter and The Kid is in School on Instagram. Subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. Be sure to throw us one of those 5-star ratings and share with your friends. Oh, and do it quickly before the kid gets home.